This is the 5th day of this August 1980 7 Days Hasheen, and we shall continue reading from the Tiger's Cave. This chapter is called Awakening to the Character of Our Individuality. And in small print, he saw all the 5 aggregates to be emptiness and passed beyond suffering. This is illumined vision, seeing things as they really are. Satori is when the real character of everything is seen. When renunciation of self is complete, the absolute, the state free from all conditions, in which at present we are putting our faith, will actually be realized. Renunciation, as you will recall, not being what is ordinarily called as renunciation, but seeing the truth of one's illusion and abstaining, seeing through it. That is true renunciation. By the power of myself, my small self, which is this little me, I can do nothing. Not even check one tear or one impulse to anger. But when I've pierced to the truth at the bottom of that self, the form of the Bodhisattva Kanon appears, which rescues the I into the absolute unconditioned. Seems a very still complicated way of saying a very simple thing. It's not that the I is rescued. There is no I. What is there to be rescued? And not to think that this means then some vision of Kanon appears. It is an upwelling of love and compassion when there is no I. Which is unconditional. An unconditional and unconditioned love. Not you do this and then I'll love you. If you don't, I hate you, or I'll be jealous, or I'll leave you. Unconditional. And unconditioned, not caused by anything. Welling up like a spring when there's nothing in the way. Faith is not just worshipping Buddha, but rather realizing the truth of oneself. Zen Master Dogen is always telling us to learn how to withdraw by turning the light and shining it back. Yeah, Dogen says so often, one must turn the light inward. And shining it back. If there's understanding, that is the shining back. This light, this illumination, is the radiating mind, the mind released towards objects. When a sound is heard, the mind is released to that sound, and we're attracted by the sound. That's the next step. We're attracted to it. We like it, we dislike it. We make a thing of it. Or when a form is seen, the mind transfers to it, and we're attracted by the form. The light, the mind which is attracted to objective things, we are to pull back. And the training of the Zen school is this withdrawing a step and considering. This withdrawing a step and considering, not always pell-mell into everything. We have this capacity to stop for a moment. Considering here not meaning necessarily reflecting, but just stopping and becoming quiet, which is absolutely necessary if something is to be seen clearly, or heard clearly, or felt clearly, or thought out clearly. What, after all, is this anger, this impulse to greed? The first condition of spiritual training is to withdraw and come to realize the truth of oneself, to look into oneself. And here at this center, for most people, almost all people, it is the questioning of oneself, starting wherever one is, through a koan, or an inquiry like who or mu. Dogen speaks of withdrawing, not of advancing. Turning the light inward, turning the questioning inward, not advancing. It is this meditation of withdrawal which is important. Again, withdrawal being the pausing, the not just impulsively always reaching out, looking for something outside, but becoming still and quiet, and looking within and questioning within. The not knowing being the questioning. When the truth of selfhood is known, or the truth of no selfhood is known, the world of faith manifests clearly. That faith which entrusts everything to Kanon. Doesn't mean thinking now Kanon will take over and lead my life. It is this which was expressed by Lao Tzu, doing nothing, yet leaving nothing undone. There's no mind in which things are done effortlessly, because there's no assertion of the self. Just the flow of wisdom, of clear seeing and knowing what needs to be done without choice. Like no one needs to make it rain. It rains. And the leaves and the earth receives. We're skipping several paragraphs and words here. The meaning of illumined vision is that the saved, he uses this word saved, must soon become the savior. When one understands, there's this most natural impulse to help others understand too, to point out what needs to be pointed out. To show what can be shown, or maybe to show what cannot be shown. The state of awakening is that the self saved by canon must become canon, is canon. It is in this that Satori must reveal itself, not just take the treasure and stash it away someplace for oneself. That is not true understanding. The condition of entering faith, of enlightenment, of awakening to the truth about one's body and mind is the realization that the 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas, are all emptiness. Namely, emptiness of this self, which tries to control, hold on, which fears, expects, demands, and escapes. We didn't go again through this whole description and all what he adds to these 5 skandhas, the form, feeling, sensing, thinking, willing, choosing, and this whole of consciousness. All until awakening totally dominated by the me, the idea of oneself. Except that there are always glimpses of that. Here and there, as in the person who comes to Mrs. Sheen, who has not a faint glimpse of this completeness, this oneness when there's no me. Because we all have this capacity to see. Enlightenment is fully grasping this, fully grasping this. Hitherto the 5 have not been emptiness, but now there's a clear understanding of what they are. Now I guess here's where he comes to it. What are these 5 aggregates? Roughly speaking, our body and mind. Sanskrit, the aggregates are called skandha, which means a heap or bundle or collection. According to associations of karma, form, sensation, thinking, impulse, and consciousness, these 5 collect and integrate to make a body and mind. In other words, they stand for our individuality. And to awaken to what that individuality is illumined vision. Actually, one must be very careful with this word individuality, because that means being indivisible. And is one indivisible, undivided inside? One isn't, is one? Divided up in many factions, opposing desires, a battlefield of this and that, and a lot of confusion. When the nature of our individuality is clearly seen by us, this is awakening. The emptiness of all these opposing fears and desires and wants and feelings. Form then is the physical body, and the other four are mental functions and the mind lord. Mind lord here being consciousness. The brain, really. It never says that. All of these ideas about oneself are all thoughts, all memories, all ingrained in the brain. Stored there. Like we store tapes and things. Or programmed, newer way even of putting it. Now a temporary combination of form and mind, namely the 5 skandhas of form and the others, is not a definite real entity to be acknowledged as I. It's just a process, an ongoing process, undivided from this whole ongoing process of life. It is something which has only temporary life. This has only temporary life. Or that. So there's nothing actual and real to be taken as I, as a permanent I, a permanent self. Yet by the force of beginningless illusory attachment from long, long ago, it is taken as a definite self. This idea is ingrained in the brain. Clinging tenaciously to this is called the condition of the delusion of the 5 skandhas. It is thinking something to be which is not, considering what has arisen from temporary association to be somehow a self. This empty fancying is just like creating in a dream the various forms which rejoice and grieve. Yokkadaishi says, in dream clearly are the 6 worlds seen. When we see a dream, clearly there are the 6 worlds, with their sufferings and joys. While seeing the dream, we do not think aside that it is a dream. So we're pursued in sweat and agony. When we know what the dream really is, there are no 6 worlds. But while seeing the dream, there are for me the opposed sets of good and bad. The 5 skandhas are all delusion. Let us be careful here. Feeling is not delusion. It's not delusion. But to think this is I am hitting myself. There are already 2. Are there 2? Or it's just that. And the sensation. When I say I don't like that, I don't want that, I want to get rid of that. That's something extra. Which as a thought, which creates feelings and moods, is also real enough. But when there's no sense of I, then there's no resentment. There's no illusion about oneself and others. One doesn't build up images of others that one worships. And then when these images are destroyed, one is thrown into utter despair, Same with oneself, images of oneself. If they don't hold up or kicked or destroyed, then one is thrown into the abyss of despair. Our delusion is that we hold tenaciously to them as being an actual and real self, to all these images and ideas. Consider, for example, a madman. He doesn't know he's mad. When he realizes it is madness, soon he recovers. First step in healing oneself or others is that one is quite mad, quite neurotic, deluded by this idea of me, and all the momentum that goes with it, the power, the force, the compulsiveness. These days there's an increase of the madness. These days there's an increase of the madness which affirms its own sanity. To be saying one is sane is already madness. He who says I'm mad is indeed the real man. Probably most of you have seen this movie in recent years, One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest. This throwing together of mad people inside a building. The only difference was some of them were wearing white coats, little things on the hat, on the head there, and the other were wearing street clothes or whatever those clothes were. The only difference in degree of madness there, but certainly difference in degree of power. Of some of the mad people over the other mad people. One must be careful not to generalize from this movie and say or think, now every mental hospital is like that. But what is said here, to first see that oneself is really mad, and not to assert one's sanity, is the first step in healing. Anyone mad with self, with a sense of self, and ignorant of that, how can that person really heal anyone? Except treat very grievous, serious symptoms, and maybe subdue the symptoms. There's a little story here. I'll read it. I knew a monk extremely straightforward by nature, who as a chance from his karma went out of his mind. He was so honest, it seemed that this very honesty drove him out of his mind. He was in a country temple in Mino, and the monks were anxious about him and came with him to Tokyo. I was at that time in charge of a school, and they came to ask my help. I put him up in a little room in a small temple, and then took him to the hospital. We all went along together, but when we came to the hospital, he wouldn't hear of going in. I've come to Tokyo to see the city, he said. As these monks here can tell you, I've never even had a cold in my whole life. It's nonsense for you to talk about my going to a hospital is ridiculous. I'm perfectly well. It was very awkward. But in such cases, a lie is permissible. Of course you are. Very strong, nothing wrong with you at all. And the thing is that there's a health investigation going on, and it's people who aren't ill, who've never had any illness that they want to examine. They want to have a demonstration of perfect healthiness. Luckily, you've come to Tokyo for sightseeing, so you won't mind just being examined in the hospital, will you? Oh, if it's just an examination, all right, and he went in. The head of the hospital made his various tests, and while he was running through them, this Abbott was saying, "Doctor, I'm not ill. I've never even had a cold in my whole life long." Doctor was saying with a faint smile, "No, indeed." The patient was mentally sick, but when he asserted he'd had no illness, the answer could only be, "No, indeed." Tell the madman he's mad and he doesn't understand. If he could understand, he would be well again. So often, people, when they see their shortcomings, fall into even greater despair rather than gratitude for seeing. If you don't see your shortcomings, then you're in trouble. Are not people today all raving and bragging of their sanity? The 5 skandhas have no fixed real nature, and in relation to our body and mind, we are as if dreaming or raving when we take them as somehow an actual self. And what is this I? This I is a madman or a mad woman. It is clinging to the empty delusion in a dream. When by good fortune, through the holy teaching, we realize little by little that the dream is a dream, that is joy. Still seeing the dream, still raving, yet more and more realizing the character of life, that it was a dream. Was a dream. Such is real happiness. In each one of his works, Master Dogen says, those who would practice Buddhism must deeply feel the passing nature of things and have faith in karma. Deeply feel the passing nature of things. Deeply feel one's sorrow, which is the sorrow of this world. And deeply realize that whatever one does has consequences for everyone. Like a pebble thrown into the water, the ring of waves stretches infinitely. In the opening passages of his book on spiritual practice, Dogen says, the heart which feels the passing nature of things is called the Bodhi heart. We recently read in a teisho, I don't have it here, while reading poetry, a brief piece of prose written by an 11-year-old girl who deeply felt the passing nature of things. It doesn't have to have gray hair to see into that. And not try to avoid it and evade it, or to bemoan it, but to feel it. And not to cling and not to escape. When in tranquility we consider ourselves, the Abbott continues, the first thing that comes up is the problem of the flow of time. Through time we feel impermanence. 50 already, 60 already. In these terms we reflect on the past. When we see young people, we think how we ourselves were young and how we can never, alas, return to that time. Well then, let us return you to your youth, say about 20, but under one condition. And that is that you will have to relive your life once more in exactly the same way. So now we return you to your youth, but with this condition. Well, no. I don't like to be young. No, I do like to be young, but to live it all over again like that, I couldn't stand it. And by gum, he's right. Maybe right now we have a chance to live it freshly. No matter whether the hair is brown, white, blonde, or no hair. When young, life seems like a level, flat highway. It doesn't seem like that to many young at all. Maybe 50 years in Japan, wherever he came from, it seemed like this to him. Not to most young people today. Some of them don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Unless one can already puff a joint or something. As the years pass, it is not like that. Diving through waves great and small, assailed by storms, I scrape through up to the slope of the 60s and now to the 70s, to repeat again this life of turmoil that I should not like. Someone has said that life is a tightrope from cliff to cliff across a valley filled with up-pointed swords. Well, if so, I've just managed to get through the 60s. On that tightrope, moreover, we have to perform stunts as we go along. And my stunt was to be a Zen priest. He's a wonderful man. I was not much of a priest, but that was the trick I performed. Performing our various stunts we have scraped through so far. But it's a life that makes one shudder at the thought of going through it again. When I think how it would have been better not to have done that. Yeah. If I only hadn't done that. And as for this, if I had done it, I should have fallen into the sword valley and perished. Truly, I should not like to live through it again. How do you feel? Never mind going back tens and tens of years. I don't want to have the last year over again. I don't want to have yesterday again. I don't want to repeat. And the reason is that my life never had any meaning that was a meaning. In retrospect, he really understands the deadness of memory and the uselessness of going back in time trying to recapture something that wasn't even there. One remembers so glowingly things that at the time weren't so glowing at all. Memory plays that trick because we want to go to some kind of a movie. If it had had a real meaning, I shouldn't mind reliving it. But when I think of the life I lived, in which the Buddha heart never at all manifested, a life passed pointlessly, I don't want to live it once more. And then they come and tell us that the paradise is on the other side. So perhaps we want to hasten forward to that glorious pure land. Here again, I don't feel much like it. What? Don't I want to get to paradise quickly? No, not too quickly. There's a story about an old woman who used to pray very earnestly in the temple every morning. The abbot overheard her one day, and this is what she said: I'm getting older and older. Children and grandchildren are too much of a trial. Family is so quarrelsome. I've no more interest in staying in this world. I pray thee, your grace will take me to you soon. All this from a bowed head. This abbot thought he'd see whether she really meant it or not. So he hid one day behind the Buddha image. The old lady came as usual and unsuspectingly prayed her usual prayer to be taken soon. The abbot shouted, "In answer to your prayer, I'm going to take you now." The old woman shrieked, "Won't the Buddha let me make a joke?" And she fled back into her quarrelsome home. This was Abbott. But where else is she going to go? Actually, many old people, when the spouse dies, one misses that quarreling. That's how one lives. That was the jogging, the exercise. Every day we're making such jokes. If we were taken now, we would be aghast. All the time it is like that. There's a pure land, but as to going there, we're not ready yet. Not ready to die to all the crap, all the garbage or rubbish, as one person put it. So it is that I do not want to return the past nor hurry to the Pure Land, which soon awaits. Not to hurry forward, nor yet to go back. Not to hurry forward, nor yet to go back. Then how should we go in life, day after day? Not merely days, but each step. Let us neither be hastening forward nor retreating. Why do we suffer in life? It's just because we simply feel pulled along. Each step is a compulsion. In the Bodhi Heart chapter of the Shobogenzo classic, Master Dogen says, From this body to the intermediate state, from the intermediate state to another body, all moment by moment are changing. In this way, unwillingly impelled by karma, the wheel of birth and death revolves without an instant's rest. By force of karma made in former lives, we're all helplessly going over and over the round and never stopping, always repeating, doing the same thing over and over, by force of habit. Stored in the brain, registered, imprinted in the brain. The forces karma irresistibly impelled along, praying to become without I and yet unable to be without the I. So I'm pulled by it. Does one just pray? Or does one look into this? All seek somehow to live without an I, not to have an I in the heart, to live from the bottom of the heart, from the fullness of the heart, from the emptiness of the heart. But there I am, in spite of my prayers, unable to be without the I. My prayer is for no great thing. I always pray just that. With 150 odd families to which I minister, I should live in peace in a state of no I. But it doesn't turn out so. One family who were very hospitable to me, I say hospitable, but this is the country, so it means a radish or a carrot from time to time. Well, they were hospitable. And then the grandfather died, and they asked me to perform the funeral rites. When the day came, the rain was falling in torrents, and the roads were flooded. A coolie came and told me he had been sent to take my things, including the ceremonial chair and the umbrella which I used in the rite. With kindly intention, parenthesis, he says, make a note of the kindliness of my intention. I said, on a day like this, they surely won't have the funeral right in the open. So there's no point in your struggling through the storm with that big chair. Please just take my things. For a chair, they could ask the school next door to lend one, and I'll use that for the ceremony. The coolie happily agreed and went off with just the bag. I followed a little later, came to the front door, imagining that it would obviously be held indoors. The young master was standing at the door with a countenance like thunder. Your Reverence, we're not going to have the funeral ceremony. I had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Not going to have a ceremony for your grandfather? But why? Never mind why, but we've cancelled it. What to do? I can't think what might have made you cancel it. Now tell me, what is it that has happened? Abbott, it's no use pretending you don't know. Pretending? I'm not pretending about anything. Please tell me what it is. All right, then, I will. This morning we sent a coolie who was to ask to take a chair, and what did your Reverend say? That the chair would get spoiled if he carried it through the rain. So we've asked such a mean priest for grandfather's funeral that he won't risk spoiling his chair. And we were going to have grandfather saved. But now we're not going to have to, and the ceremony's off. When this sort of thing happens, where is the no I, which we're always thinking about in our heads? Where is the Satori? It's not easy when one actually comes up against life. Where is that faith and enlightenment which were here just now? And what remains in our heart at this moment? However, I pray to be peaceable. When such unreasonable accusations are made, I want to shout, "Shut up!" But I cannot. Let the Abbott think. If I give that shout, am I not doing something which I shall never be able to retrieve? That's in another part of my head. I want to shout. But our life is this, that one cannot shout. We're impelled on the wheel of birth and death, borne along on the round of karma. And for all my prayers, inevitably my character appears. The illusory character appears. However, I pray to be without I. My character is that I cannot be without I. As I come gradually to comprehend this, I cannot help feeling an inexpressible loneliness and desolation. I do not know how much you feel it. But in the contradictions revealed by introspection, by seeing inside, looking inside, there's a great feeling of desolation. This country life in which we cannot be what we like to be, when examined from within, produces a desolation. Even with one's parents, unable to discard the meanness of self. Even with spiritual people, unable to throw off our deceits. And yet, when I come to penetrate to the very bottom of that desolation, penetrate to the very bottom of that desolation, not fill it up with something, not run away from it, but face it, penetrate to it, feel the pain of it completely. Then as I stand, there suddenly manifests the power of absolutely unconditional forgiveness. It is a power which will never desert man. Impelled step after step as we are in the circling of this life, in which when we want to speak we cannot speak, the power of absolute forgiveness is dimly glimpsed. And then a joy comes to the heart. Quote, "It was wrong to have caused you anger. But for the sake of your grandfather who's just died, won't you let me take the funeral service?" To be able to say these words from the bottom of the heart is through no power of my own. It is the joy and the love of Kano. When the self seems merged in Kanon, enveloped in this power of absolute forgiveness, which is Kanon, for the first time the heart becomes empty. If all I can manage is, well, let's pass it over, let me take the service, then the joy is only a faint one. Some people dub it self-intoxication, this spiritual joy. When conditions are favorable, they say you experience a feeling of well-being within. So they say, and let them say it. I have this deep certainty that it is an ecstasy, something blessed, and the joy comes when the speech proceeds from a heart which has been emptied of all rancor, emptied of the sense of you and me. As being different. We'll stop here.